Let's call to order. This is going to be the City of Port Richey Community Redevelopment Agency Board meeting for Tuesday, March 22nd. At this time, I'd like to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Chairman Scott Tremblay.
Here.
Member Jenny Sorrell.
Here.
Member Todd McClary.
Here.
Member Tom Kinsella.
Here.
Member Linda Rodriguez.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager John Dew.
Here. Thank you. Looking for motion to approve.
Motion to approve board minutes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. At this time, there's no one signed up from the general public, but I did want to open it up at this time for public commentary. Show of hands if anyone would like to speak. Seeing no hands, we're going to move on to comments from our city manager, Mr. Dew.
Nothing to answer.
From the board, and I'm going to start with Councilwoman Sorrell, or Board Member Sorrell. So, correct.
Thank you very much. I have nothing at this time.
Board Member Rodriguez.
I have nothing as well. Thank you.
Nothing.
Okay, so we're going to move on at this point to board business, which is going to be the Cody River Landing bid phase construction observation services. And I'm going to pass that to Mr. Dew for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In front of you, the individual project supplement to master agreement for professional services. This is services that Ayers Engineering will provide for both phase 1 and phase 2. Basically 3 tasks. Owner's representation, project management meetings they will attend. They will be our representative through those meetings. Task 2 is bid phase support. Ayers will prepare bid packets, attend pre-bid meetings, and so on. You see the details in there. And task number 3, construction observation. City staff has minimal ability. We can go out and measure something and make sure it was 100 feet long, but the technical questions, the technical observations, the technical assessments, we would need assistance with. And so as we discussed 2 weeks ago, we wanted those items in the contract. Mr. Matthew, Mr. Martin, and I spent a good deal of time going through that so that we're all on the same page, so that Ayers and the city and the CRV board know what's in the contract, we know what we're getting, and we're getting everything we need so that Ayers is taking care of issues that we don't have the capacity to do. I go to my engineering department, there's nobody there. And that's where I've asked Ayers to step in. So what you have in front of you is that that enhanced contract, enhanced services, and I think the CRE board and Ayers are on the same page now. Mr. Martin is here to answer any questions you might have of him and Ayers. And ultimately, I would request a motion to approve or authorize signing the contract.
This is going to be an action item, so what I'd like to do is invite Mr. Martin. So that when we open for discussion, I think part of that may be some questions. So I wanted you to be able to be here to answer some of the questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Mayor.
And Mr. McClary, I wanted to start with you.
I do this type of activity in my secondary life. The concern I have, and I've run into this before, and this has nothing to do with Ayers Engineering or anything of that, but he probably knows what I'm going to say. I've run into this especially with HOAs, apartment complex, or condo complexes, etc. The concern I have, and I've run into this before, is typically in a construction project, there's 3 entities. There's the owner's representative, there's the GC contractor, there's the architectural designer. They work well in that they're checks and balances to each other. The architect typically, designer I'll say, in your case, typically acts as the neutral party if there's a discrepancy between the owner and the GC doing work. And to an extent, they actually all kind of check each other. If there's a discrepancy between the architect and the GC, the owner will sometimes weigh in and say, well, it's my dollar, I can do X or I can do Y. GC really never gets to weigh in between the owner and architect, but sometimes they do. They do value engineering, items of that nature. I am wholly in favor of doing this project management and owner's representation services. I agree completely that the city is ill-equipped to handle the monitoring of the construction. The concern I have is this, assigning this to heirs individually as a company, they're also the designer. So that takes one of the checks and balances out to a degree. Obviously, you would assign separate people, project manager, who would be separate of the design team, presumably, but there isn't anyone that is entirely neutral to that event. So heirs, let's say there's a design screw up or something of that nature. Is it truly an independent observation with respect to the design intent or the design versus the GC or something of that nature? I always recommend to any of my clients, if you're going to have an architect or an engineer in terms of 50-year building certs or anything, you never hire them for the project management certifications. One, it's a selling point for me, but it really is to protect the owner in that I'm a neutral party. I have no allegiance to the designer. I have no allegiance to the GC. My client is the owner and only the owner. That's my concern with respect to this. I'm wholly in favor of doing it. It's just my concern is Ayers, who is the designer. Now, if Ayers wasn't the designer, I wouldn't have a problem with that. It's the fact that you're now taking two of those elements and combining them into one, which kind of breaks apart that natural check and balance to the system.
You're still going to have the check and balance between the three parties. You're going to have whoever that we go out to bid and we hire. You're going to have them as the architect.
Well, no, you're already designed now.
Right.
So they have full design things. So they could theoretically protect the design. Then you have the owner. It's almost like a triad: GC, design engineer, and owner/owner's rep. You're now kind of shifting more towards the architectural design phase with the owner's rep services, instead of having a true neutral triad going for the project. And again, it's nothing. Yeah, it's the age-old. Why do I have a bug attacking me? It's the age-old problem when you have this type of services. I'm not saying it'll ever go wrong, but there's always the complete neutrality is out of it because you're going with the same firm in and of its own nature. So now it's the our owner's rep/architect is the same firm. You'll have the GC, and then you'll have, excuse the term, an ill-equipped owner watching all, unable to check the project management portion of it.
Well, I guess the alternative would be to have them put out for bid not only the contracting services but the engineer.
No, the engineer, I'm presuming in your contract you have,
Well, who would oversee the project if it's not going to be their
you
engineer?
can go to a separate project management.
That's what I was saying.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I misunderstood that part.
What?
That would be my suggestion. Do that, but do it with an independent project management firm. Obviously, my firm would exclude itself from any and all bids.
So how much would this cost us?
Well, it's a simple bid process. You already have that put together. You have the scope of the plans that would go out to bid, and you just solicit 3 firms under normal bid criteria.
So do you have a range? I mean, if we're talking about $50, then let's go for it.
Oh, no.
we're not
I mean,
talking 50.
overall, you would be going to firms, the price would probably be very similar to what you're seeing here overall.
But how far would that set us back too? Because one of the reasons we have an engineer so we can move the project quicker Because if there's an issue and you run into an issue with DEP, DOT.
Well, we're not taking his design. I mean, he would still be responsible DOT and all of that.
But I think the discussion on why we did this is because the city doesn't have the engineering capability. So if there's a problem on Monday and they're only have an engineer out there once a week, that means that project is stalled for at least a week until there's an engineer out there looking at it. So, I think the purpose of what we talked about was to move this project along quicker. So if you put it out to bid, any part of it, then it's going to set us back through the bid process that additional amount of time, would it not?
Well, you would be bidding out the project management services, and then you would then go to the GC bid, theoretically.
Right, but those extra steps would delay the project, would it not? I'm asking, I don't know.
I mean, theoretically, the bid cycle for that, and Jim, you'd have to weigh in on the true bid cycle for a services contract, which I don't know how that
Yeah,
works.
let me just give you some more information. First of all, there's a state law that allows design builds, so.
Yeah.
So in a design build, that issue is open, do you understand me? That's what a design build is, so you understand what I'm talking about? So in other words, when you do a design build, you can literally go out on more major projects now. And the problem with design builds is the one Councilman McClary's been talking about, is you don't have that check and balance, but it is allowed to have design builds. That's pretty much what we're doing here. The only additional cost, having said that, would be that we have to go out to bid for those project management services, and that bid, we'll have to get someone to do that for us. Okay, just so you know. In other words, that'll be a tad of a complicated bid in the sense that we're going to do bid phase. We're going to need bid phase support. That's what this is, and construction observation. Okay.
Yeah, well, this isn't a design build.
No.
We're still.
I'm saying if we're going to go out and take bids for someone else to do this, we're going to need their help at least to pay them to go out and get that bid. Mr. Duke can't do that here in the city. That bid.
Okay.
It's a small amount of money, more than $50. It's going to be a few dollars, right? In other words, we have to do that bid. In other words, when we do simple bid, like we're buying a boat or something, we just tax the stuff to it. We have a form contract for that. But when you're going to start saying, well, I want you to do, observation of X, Y, and Z in this bid, someone's going to have to, put that all together. So it'd be a small cost. I would think $10,000 or something, but that would be the only additional one. But pretty much what you're doing is a design build here, right? If we hire him, that turns into the same thing, right?
Well, it wouldn't be a design build because we're not hiring the GC. We're just hiring the project management / observation.
But in a design build, you lose that check and balance, right?
Correct. Yes.
So what he's saying is correct. You do lose that check and balance. He's absolutely correct.
I guess one of the questions is that we don't have an engineer on staff, but you do have people that work in different departments that would be down there that we're not the normal owner. Your city, you still have a lot of staff with a lot of experience that may not be engineers. So,
And that's something that we discussed with Chris and kind of worked out the extent to which city staff can be a part of the process. We don't have engineers, but we do have experienced people who would be able to do parts of the observation and parts of the evaluations. There comes a time at which somebody's going to say this needs an engineer, and like I said, we can go measure to make sure if it says 100 feet, it's 100 feet. But I don't have anybody to test the grade and test the concrete and make sure the pipe is the right composite and all of the stuff that I would be expecting heirs to take care of, or whomever was overseeing it. So we would be involved to the extent that we have the capacity. And it's something that Chris and I discussed at length, making sure that he understands what our capacity is, and I understand where he's going to pick up and take over with the expertise that we don't have.
I'll ask another question if I can.
well, one of the things that I was looking at heirs, because I was reading about the company, it's, from what I understand, a nationwide company, and that's the nuts and bolts of what your company is the engineering portion, correct?
Correct.
That's the specialty of what you guys do on a national.
I would say it's twofold. We've got a very strong engineering and design team, and we're also very heavily involved in inspection and oversight. In fact, our town office has got over 20 certified building inspectors and construction observation personnel on staff here at Tampa.
So that's what you guys do. Right.
Correct.
Okay. So, and I'm sure there's others is what.
Terracotta, I mean, there's tons of them.
Right. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Kinsella, what are your thoughts?
I understand what Mr. McCleary is saying. My concern is again, we're dragging our feet from moving this forward. I hear from the residents, they're tired of the lip service that this council has been giving, and they're not seeing anything. But I do understand we're stuck here. On the task 3, my question I have on the consultant providing on-site observation, is this something that will be done daily? I mean, will you have someone there all the time representing us?
Substantially, yes.
Page 19 lays that out. If you want to refer to page
That's the
19.
time and materials he said he was bringing. We've had a lot of conversations about that.
The man hours presented in test 3 equate to 40 hours a week for the anticipated 9-month duration. Certainly, the contractor will likely be working more than 8 hours a day, 4 to 5 days a week, but we anticipate providing support. Sure.
I can be good with that.
And what's your opinion on going back out to bid for a portion of this versus moving ahead now with what we have? And I wanted both of your input, and I'll start with Sorrel.
Are we dragging our feet again?
That's my concern.
I think so. I think we'd be dragging our feet again. It seems to me like Harrison's got the reputation and the resources to cover everything that we need. When we come up against a problem, I guess that's the time we need to address it. And if they fall down on the job, we can call them on it.
And that's why we have a lawyer on staff, correct?
Exactly, 2 of them. And an engineer.
Where?
Isn't that what you do?
No, we do project management, actually.
I appreciate your explanation. I thought that was really good, and I understand the tripod of the oversight. When I do construction in my house, the city sends out an entity to make sure that the electrical panel was up to date, etc. So who does that with this project? You do, okay. Yeah. I don't think we're dragging our feet with Todd bringing that up. I think that's a really good point, but I do think that heirs would be sufficient to get this project going.
But I think if a problem were to arise, we would be aware of it and still be able to. I think as an owner, we're probably a little bit stronger as a city than most normal builders. So I think it's a little less of a concern, even though it's still there. And that's just my humble opinion. Because like I said, you have a lot of people on the staff that's been doing this for a long time. So if there's a serious problem with what's going on with the oversight of the project itself, I'm sure we'll be the first to know from our employees, correct?
Yeah. And there wouldn't be a problem with our staff popping in
I imagine they'll be down there on a daily basis.
all the
In
time.
fact, I would expect that. And I would assume I'd be the one that would decide whether I had a problem with it or not. So, no, we would be intimately involved and obviously spending a lot of time with whoever the heirs rep is on site. We may not spend 40 hours a week there, but public works, utilities, they're all going to be involved anyways. And we've got a building official that would undoubtedly be involved as well. So it's not like we're going to just wash our hands of it. We'll be there.
Outside of that issue, were there any questions or comments about the contract, and one of the staff members that we have, or not staff members, but the person that's sitting here that's probably spent a lot of time with this was our city attorney, and I just wanted to ask Mr. Matthew if you were comfortable with this contract. It looks like it was two contracts that were baked down into one from 2 weeks ago, and I just wanted to know what.
Well, no, it's all right. No, it's not two contracts baked into one. The last time you had two contracts before you, one was the scope of services. The scope of service, there's a master agreement which controls all of them that I reviewed last year at least. And these are scope of services that we've done a couple with Airs here now already. And so since originally this was being done as two phases, we engaged under scope of services, the Airs company, and they pretty much completed phase one. And so then at the last meeting, you voted to engage them for phase two, but at the same time said you wanted to do it all together. Okay. Now, there was this scope of services for bid observation, for bid aid, I guess, for lack of a better word, I forget what the name he puts on it here, as well as construction observation, which is the bigger issue, and that was somewhat light. And at the last meeting, when the issue was brought up, look, we don't have engineers here. We're a small city, and generally we're going to need someone to do that. Mr. Morton came back and said, look, I'll prepare another more healthier, bigger scope of services and bring the issue up with time and materials. And so this is nothing more than that same contract beefed up with more things. And when it initially came in, there was a different bullet points in here. When you see the three tasks, you see them listed out as bullet points. And we then had a lengthy conversation. I wanted something a little more than just the bullet points with this kind of money. And I wanted to see the time and material. So at least, not that you're not going to be there for the 1,440 hours or wherever you're going to send down there. It's a lot of hours. You'll see it on page 19. Just so we had something now. It'll probably take longer than 9 months. You'll probably be there, and if everything goes great, maybe they'll be here less hours, or maybe there'll be more. But that's what it is. So in terms of the legality of it, I'm just fine with it. You understand what I mean? It's just rather routine. It's pretty substantial for a scope of services. I understand it's a lot of money, but many times $2 million to be done like this, as Mr. McClary could probably tell you. Okay, but so that's it. Whether you want to do that or not, that's a council decision, not mine. So legally, it's just fine with me.
But it includes phase 1 and 2.
No, you keep saying that.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
This is after all the design is done. To a degree, you're going to start your project management services probably a little earlier. After all the design's done, the bid documents are done, then this kicks in. We're down the road yet.
Yeah, they're going to help us with the bid documents, actually. It's part of it. This is owner's representations, bid phase, and construction observation.
That's the actual bid itself.
Yes.
Under his design criteria, he should be assembling the bid documents, and then he turns it over to his project management, who assembles the scope of work for the bidder's criteria after all the bid documents. Correct me if I'm wrong at any point.
And we're actually getting more help than that, because we just can't. He's going to sit there and review the bids, answer the questions.
Then he goes into bid phase of it.
Right.
But he won't go there. They'll probably start handing it over to project management at 80 or 90% so they can start scoping out and identifying potential bid criteria. And then they're going to carry it all the way through to bid analysis, bid leveling. Then they're going to present to, correct me if I'm wrong at any time, then they're going to present to council their recommendation based or to whomever. They're going to present it to somebody, bid leveled out. They say we have equalized all the scope between the bidders, because all the GCs always have different things that come back and forth between each other. He's going to bid level it all out, present it to you, and then make a recommendation that we then act on.
And then observe it as you go down.
And then observe, then he'll send his weekly, daily guide out to observe.
That's exactly correct.
If I can reframe the question, though, because originally when we started and we looked at this, we had 3 phases and they were broken down separately. This looks like it's all inclusive for 1 and 2, which looks like it was combined, I guess. So the question is whether or not this is 1 and 2 combined.
Yes.
Yes, but one's pretty much done.
Right, no, I get that, but that's
We already paid
everything,
them.
that's everything through phase two is what
It's
I mean.
everything through phase two.
That's- I guess that's
We've
the better
already
question.
voted on and expended
Right.
the monies on phase one.
Phase one,
so now
right,
we're
but
in
this
phase
gets us through phase two, okay.
Right.
And then I'll take phase one and phase two, bid them all out under this scope.
And then, but that, the scope of that bid will be for 1 and 2 to be done all at the same time, same builder, same.
As opposed to just one, right?
Correct.
Is there
that's what I'm-
estimates that, full estimates that come with this criteria, or not? Do you have estimates that come with it? Do you have an estimating team that puts together a conceptual bid?
Absolutely.
Conceptual, budget pricing based off of this?
Absolutely. Once the phase two design is 100% complete, we will submit an estimated project construction cost.
You can't do it in 90 or 80?
Well, in fact, we submitted one last week.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you've already done it. Yeah,
Very
it's,
preliminarily.
Oh, yeah, well, that's just conceptual
estimate.
estimating.
Right.
That isn't worth anything. It's right. You can, I guarantee you, in this day and age, as we're speaking today with material pricings, that's not worth a whole lot.
And the other issue, that's probably one of the more important decisions that we're gonna have to make, is you're gonna have the bids coming in and which bid do we choose? And you probably will have a lot of insight in terms of recommendations.
Absolutely.
Right.
As the councilman mentioned, that's part of the bid analysis. We collect all the bids, we evaluate, ensuring that the contractors are qualified contractors, making sure the bids are balanced, and ultimately giving a recommendation. Assessing each and every unit price on the bid form to make sure it's within parameters.
Any other questions or comments? And this looks like it's an action item, is it not? So we need to
need a motion if you want.
motion if we're going to do anything.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize signing of the contract.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. At this time, I'm going to open it up for public commentary if there is any. Mr. Mueller, welcome. Come on. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. I think it's incumbent upon us to consider more than one price point for this activity. And I don't think it'd be out of question to put that phase of this up to bid. Each of us working as Councilwoman Rodriguez, we look at our own home and we're not going to go with one price. There's no way to evaluate whether it's high, low, or in between. I think it's important for us to spend our money wisely. Everybody up there sits up there as a fiduciary and should be looking at this as how do you spend your own money? And is this something that is going to move forward with value rather than overpay for something? In addition, I believe the way the discussion occurred a few weeks ago, they were revising the sidewalk area and going to encroach upon that swale area and create an issue with the EPA, one of those organizations that was going to further allow or incur time on this project. I don't think a couple of weeks or a month or so, if we get something like this bid out, and quite frankly, I don't know why you couldn't bid both simultaneously and have heirs evaluate the bids, and they're welcome to bid on it as well. And they've already got their price here, so we have a stake in the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commentary before we put it to a vote? Seeing no hands, before we vote, is there any additional need for any discussion? Put it to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Hey,
Motion passes on a 4-1 vote. This time we're going to move on to old business. If there's any.
No, thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
I have nothing. For motion.
Yes, we're done.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.